Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Ranking the Albums. It's Sunday morning. Here we are once again, at least Sunday morning where we are. And in the co-captain's chair for this episode, he's back once again. Mr. Rick Bonte. What's going on, my friend?
A lot, and could be looking forward to this one. Thanks for bringing this up.
You got it. A band that we've been talking about doing for a long time on the channel, and they've got a million albums. So we said, let's do our favorite 10 albums from the great Savoy Brown, of course, the British blues and blues rock band, always fronted by the legendary and now late Kim Simmonds, one of the great guitar players of all time, truly influential guy, and one of the greats, I think, who never really got his just due as being one of the great players of that era and of all time. But we're going to talk about him and his cast of merry men in this ever-changing band known as Savoy Brown, right? Who debuted back in, 1967.
Yes.
Way back, and released albums all the way up until, God, 2020. Ain't done.
Yeah. You did an interview with him prior, and
Yeah.
I think he was promoting something. Wasn't he not? Or was it a compilation?
It was the Ain't Done Yet album, and I
Yes.
also talked to him about this particular one, which is Witchy Feeling, which came out in 2017. So he was basically releasing stuff right up until his passing. So give
Hmm.
him a lot of credit for just being there, regardless whether this whole blues rock thing was maybe not really in fashion. Kim didn't care; he kept doing what he does, and a lot of really cool albums over the course of the career. And we picked out our 10 favorites. Might be a bit heavy on the 70s albums because, quite frankly, or the late 60s albums, because those, quite frankly, are really, really great for a reason. So, but we're going to rank them as we like them. And I'll have one. Well, why don't we do this, Rick? Why don't we do two at a time? This way we'll pop
Good.
five trips around. So, why don't you start with your number 10 and number 9?
Okay. Well, let's start with getting to the point. I like this record. I just think it dipped from the first and it really picks up to me. I enjoy this record a lot. But I got to start somewhere. And I think with this one, they got some, they at this point in the game, because it's the second album, they started to add some originals as well, doing some covers. So I enjoy that, like Flood in Houston, Stay With Me, Baby. And they have a new singer at the time, Chris, he's joining them. But they do the Faithful Blues cover, Honeybee, Downchild, Mr. Downchild, Getting to the Point, all these, just a lot more Ken Simmons tunes. He now really established himself, and I really like it a lot. I think it's kind of hard because some of the things about these albums, they could be par with others because they're so similar.
Yeah.
And if you look at how busy they were scheduled, they were putting like 2 albums a year in some place and some spots in the 70s. It's amazing how much material they were throwing out and considering they were a very busy working band.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, there it was not uncommon. They had like what 8, 9, 10 albums within like 4 years of them being around. They just been pumping out album after album after album. It's crazy. Yeah.
Right on. So the next one would be a step further. That's the 1969. That one, I really like this because of it's more the same blues, but they're going in that psychedelia stuff and more psychedelic and they jam a little bit. And one of the things it's very common among their peers. Like I heard, when you think about how Savoy Brown came about, they were like John Mayall's and Blues Breaker and 10 Years After, all those guys being the tribute to the blues and a little bit of jazz and jamming, but they were aware of what was going around them with Cream and Jimi Hendrix. So the album, being an album experience, would have some psychedelia and some jamming, but they were famous of always having medleys in their shows where they put 3 or 4 or 5 songs together, and they kind of did that. So what I like about this record, besides the individual songs, and I like that song, I'm Tired, and there's some great hits on here, but it felt like a live performance, like how you open an album and how you would close the record. It felt like you were putting a live record, even though it wasn't.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, it's a good one. More about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, my number 10. Um, Hold on. Jesus, I thought I put these in order. Damn it. Maybe not. Ah, there we go. Okay, I had them upside down. All right, I'm gonna go with an album called Hellbound Train, which is this guy right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's from 1972. This is their eighth album. So this contains, at the time, this is the second album with their then newish lineup, which probably was their most consistent lineup in terms of number of albums released. So this had Kim Simmons on lead guitar. You had Dave Walker on vocals, of course, who would also later join Fleetwood Mac and almost became the lead singer of Black Sabbath.
Black Sabbath, yes.
Paul Raymond on keyboards and guitars and vocals. Later
Yes.
joined UFO. Also, he
Yep.
was in Chicken Shack for a little bit as
That's
well.
right. That's right.
Andy Sylvester on bass and Dave Bidwell on drums. So kind of for some people looked at maybe as the classic lineup. I'm not, I kind of think the album, the lineup before was more the classic sounding lineup, but this lineup was together for a while. So anyway, funny, you see Hellbound Train, he's like, oh, it's probably a hard charging album and stuff like that. It really kind of isn't, but there's some really good songs on here.
That's
Uh,
right.
Doing Fine, good bluesy shuffle, nice piano from Paul. Lost and Lonely Child is really a good song. I like that a lot. That's got some nice organ from Paul Raymond, some cool acoustic guitar textures, and biting electric guitar from Kim. Dave Walker's vocals really done. That's one of my favorite songs on the album. Trouble by These Days and Times and I'll Make Everything All Right are kind of like almost gospel-oriented blues tracks. Pretty cool. If I could see an end, straight boogie. They do a lot of that straight boogie stuff. I can give or take some of that to me. It's like with boogie stuff, I'm like, I like it a little bit. I don't like a lot of it. But It'll Make You Happy is a good organ-driven heavy blues rocker. And I love the closing title track, Hellbound Train. Really, really
Yes.
good stuff. For me, I think out of all the albums on my list, I think this one is a little uneven, but I know a lot of people really like it a lot. And I think for me, the songs that I like on here, I like a lot. So it's one of
Mm-hmm.
those albums where like half of it is really good. The other half I don't like as much, but the good stuff really outweighs the bad stuff, or not the bad stuff, but the lackluster stuff, and drives this into my top 10. So yeah, Hellbound Train is my number 10. My number nine, I'm gonna go with the one you just mentioned, A Step Further. So right there.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, folks, these BGO 2-on-1 CDs are
Yes. A
indispensable.
lot of those.
Great way to get a hold of the Savoy Brown catalog. You can just scoop these up, and all of a sudden, boom, you've got most of the catalog.
That's
Um,
right.
so this is, as Rick mentioned, from 1969. They were releasing at least 2 albums a year. This is their fourth album. The last one with their pianist Bob Hall. And he's all over this album. It's almost like,
Mhm.
this is my last album with the band. I'm going to be appearing on
Going out with
each one.
style.
Yeah, Made Up My Mind is a great track. Waiting in the Bamboo Grove has really cool horn section. There's like horns on this album, and I think it works
Mhm.
really well. They didn't utilize that a lot, but really
No.
good. Great guitar solo from Kim, and I love their instrumentals. I think their instrumentals on their early albums are terrific, and Kim wrote all of them. Really good. Like you mentioned before, his songwriting skills were really starting to come into play around this time. I'm Tired also has cool horns, really great guitar solo. And then you got, like you mentioned, side two is basically like this big long boogie jam medley type of thing, which I think is pretty cool. I think it's a good album in their catalog. And that's my number nine. A Step Further.
Right on.
Back to
By
you.
the way, how did you get exposed to this band? Like,
Uh, God, that's a good question. I'm trying to think of the first time oh, you know what? Do you remember? God, this is probably going back to the early 90s. They were I forget which label it was, A&M maybe, released these like Chronicles box sets. I had one, so I bought one from Savoy Brown, I had one for Bad Company, I had one for Bachman Turner Overdrive, I had one for Camel, and I had one for Caravan. I believe it was called Chronicles. And basically they were like 2 disc compilation box sets that gave you like a lot of best of some of these bands, these older
oh,
bands.
okay.
And I bought a bunch of them because they were my first exposure to a lot of these bands. And one of them was Savoy Brown, because of course they had Kim Simmons on the front playing guitar like from the back, and he looked so cool. And I'm like, this has got to be good. And I remember really digging it. But then anytime you buy something like that, if you really like it, you're like, all right, well, this is kind of a teaser to the whole catalog. Let me go start buying the albums then. So that's what I did. So I bought like a cool compilation and then just started getting other stuff.
Well, you know my love affair for the blues and stuff like that. And one of the common things that my dad and I had as we're two different people, but what we had was we loved the old rock and roll, and he basically taught me the beginning of rock and roll and the blues. And then when I went over my cousin Joe's house, he had this history of British invasion, and I don't know what volume it was, maybe volume two or three, but it had a list of people that I had never heard because I've known the Stones and Beatles and all the common pop guys, but they had John Mayer in there, they had Chris Farrell and all that. In fact, Savoy Brown was on there, and I thought it might have been a name of a person with John Mayer as the name and as a person. I didn't know it was the name of a band, but I saw that. That was my first time, and I didn't know the song to stand out to remember what song was on that record, but I remember being cool blues and something I like when I listened to Cream and others of that era. And then around when I got to my 20s, I went to London with my dad to a club called Leadbelly, and Savoy Brown was playing. Kim Simmons was playing. I was blown away. And so I bought some CDs from there, and that's when I went backward. Then just to get him to sign something, I bought that collection, double
That's the
CD.
one. So what is it called?
Yeah,
That's what I was talking about. Yeah.
that's what I figured might be it. And so I enjoyed it, and I'm like, oh, what these other albums that had it? So that's when I went backwards. But I saw him ever since then. We come to the Windsor Blues Fest. I got guitar picked from him. I got his signature. I became a big fan just watching him perform. I didn't never heard his music, just watching him live, and I was a fan ever since.
Yeah, I mean, this really was a whole movement. So you mentioned John Mayall, you mentioned 10 years after. There was Savoy
Mm-hmm.
Brown, there was
Fleetwood
Fleetwood
Mac and
Mac,
Peter
there was
Green area.
Peter Mac, there was Jethro Tull was part of this movement early on, right? You had all these bands, the British blues movement, right? So many groups that were doing this sort of thing. And they all spawned very notable players that would either go on to do other things, or these bands would just become very, very notable. And this is one of them. So, yeah.
Yeah, and interesting all the cats that you mentioned so far. Uh, Paul Raymond, but we also know Roger Earl who becoming Foghat,
Yeah, yeah.
Lonesome Dave Perrette. That was their launching pad to form the great Foghat band that we love.
Yeah.
Okay, next with me is just almost very similar to you is whoop, I went backwards. Is the 1972 Hellhound
Well, that's right.
Train, and I think that was the strongest song. I mean, all those other stuff were pretty good, and they ended it with the grand finale. So I don't need to say anymore. You said the right things about those songs because I will elaborate on the next one a little bit more. It's Shakedown, the very first album, and you might be surprised why it's up here, because considering how a lot of it's just all covered. But you know what? You know what? We talked a lot about how these bands influence other things. We know the big splash of the Beatles and the Stones helped Yardbirds and the Who and everything get a momentum, and some of it splash. But we talk about Led Zeppelin a lot in this channel, and we also talked about how a lot of people say, and rightfully so, Jeff Beck Truth album is the blueprint for Led Zeppelin. Even though Jimmy Page added a bow and a lot of new stuff, it's almost like Jeff Beck on steroids. But if you look at this album, this is the blueprint for Jeff Beck Group, because there's so many songs here that Jeff Beck covered, and then so many things that they did where they had instrumentals, they had a bit of a psychedelic stuff in there. But it's interesting. I mean, it definitely a Jeff Beck Group is like this band on steroids. When you see it, it definitely moved up a level. But check out some of these songs. We've heard this before. I Ain't Superstitious, right? Let Me Love You, Baby. That's on the Truth album. Even when they retitled the Rock Me Baby, Rock My Plain Soul, that's the same song. But anyway, they got some other great gems in here. Black Knight, High Rise is a nice tune. Rock Me Baby, I mentioned that. I Smell Trouble, Oh Pretty Women, Little Girl, It's My Own Fault, Shake 'Em Down. I mean, and a couple of these, if you go to that Get 'Em to Point album, they also do You Need Love with Led Zeppelin, use the line for the whole I love. So this, these guys were listening to this band as well. I mean, this band, everybody's listening to all the music that's going around at the time. But anyways, I really like this record, even though they only had this singer Bryce for the one record, and it was actually known as the Savoy Brown Blues Band. And it maybe even thought that lead singer was Savoy Brown. And so, but he didn't stay to the second album on. They basically went on. But I just want to say, it's a really good record, though. I like it, and I can't help enjoying the fact that I know this was a sneak preview to what was going to come. If you look at it, because this came out in 1967, Truth album came in 68, Led Zeppelin 1 came in 69. It's almost like, they passed on and somebody had to add more to the idea and made it even better, larger than life. But this all
That
starts.
domino effect, right? Doom,
Yeah,
boom, boom.
Domino, that's a great example.
Yeah. All right. My number 8 is Getting to the Point, which you mentioned before. So that's, in fact, there's both the albums we just talked about, right? There's
Yeah.
two in one. Yeah, I mean, for 1968, second album, totally new lineup, right? Which you mentioned before. I think, the secret weapon in this band, in this lineup was Chris Yolden on vocals. Great voice. Really
Yes.
good voice. I would argue, Dave Peverett's here, Roger Earl's here, the future Foghat guys, Bob Hall, who I mentioned before on piano. To me, this might be the classic lineup of the band. It's either this one or the one after it. Those are the two longest standing.
I agree.
And this is just like the first album. This is a good mix of like some covers and a lot of new originals. You talked a bit about all the songs, so I'm not going to go too much further. I will say The Incredible Gnome Meets Jacksman is the smoking instrumental on this. Again, written by
Yes.
Tim. Great guitar solos. Give Me a Penny is just heavy blues rock. I really like this a lot.
Me
I
too.
do want to mention this because I've talked about this song by another band, which probably we should talk about in this conversation. Free, including the great Paul Kossoff. There's a song on here called Dr. Downchild, which has a killer solo from Kim Simmonds that will remind you of Paul Kossoff's great, slow, lethal guitar solo on the Moonshine song from Free. So if anybody likes that guitar solo, listen to Dr. Downchild. You will have the hairs on the back of your neck going all sorts of wiggly. Trust me, really good. So that is my number 8. My number 7 is going to be, let's go a little bit later here, 10 years as a matter of fact. I'm going to go with Savage Return from 1978. That's that one right there. So this is their 14th album. Just think about that. 14 albums already at this point. It's just crazy. So this is one of those albums that's just like a one-off lineup. There's just a bunch of guys who all of a sudden appeared on the album. This is now, by this point in time, this is Kim's band. He's basically just calling the shots about everything. But this one like rocks hard. This is less like the early blues style and more of like just a rock album. It's got a song called The First Night, just kick-ass hard rocker. Don't Do It, Baby Do It, catchy, but also really rocks. You got this guy named Ian Ellis who plays bass and sings. Really good singer, right? Spirit High is really good. Kim's guitar tone on the whole album is really good. There's a good amount of organ on here too. Play It Right is kind of like a generic boogie track. That's kind of like throwaway for me. But man, Walk Before You Run sounds like old Humble Pie. Really good. My Own Man is excellent. There's some molten guitar on here. And Double Lover has some just great guitar work and really good vocals. I think it's a really strong album. And if you want more of a rockin' Savoy Brown, this is one of two that I'm going to talk about in my list that I think give you a little bit more of that. So Savage Return from 1978, that one right there. And this is paired up with Skin and Bone, which is the album that came before it, which is also very good as well. Didn't make my list, but very good. So
Yeah, there's a few that I didn't get like that, but that's actually On Its Way. That's the only one I don't have to complete my 70s.
oh, this one, yeah, that's a good
I
one.
just got, but there's so many albums, and we knew that, so we made that clear that why we could only say 10 albums, because not all of us had it all. We have a lot, though. I mean, I got like, what, 16, 17 here? And, but that doesn't cover it all. I mean, I even have a compilation album, as you've seen here. There's another one from 1992 to 2007, because there's a lot of albums are discontinued, so they put it all on there. So it's hard to get the complete discography, because this man was a hard worker and he had a lot of lineup changes, so it's hard to keep up, to be honest. My next one is a real gem and a more a recent discovery to me. because it's just like what I learned about those two albums that I'm just ordered. When you brought this to the forefront, I said, "Well, I think I got a lot. So let's check out what am I missing?" And I saw, oh, I got two I could go get. But this one came in time for me to do the ranking to really digest it all, and I really liked it. And I had it for a while because we talked about it for a few weeks. And so, and then this one, what a nice surprise! The Boogie Brothers. I really enjoy the guitar work, and even when he's just sitting there, like he's sitting on a porch and just jamming on a guitar in some of these songs, there's a lot of cool gems. I love it where it comes in. I love the little bit of jazzy thing that he did in there. I love the sound of this record. I just like it. It's a fresh of to the ears from everything I was hearing in this period, and to hear something so uplifting. It jumped a lot. And I've been listening to around the clock all the time. It's been in my car for this whole assignment because I really enjoy this the tracking order. You can, I just enjoy it. You feel like you can work, you can drive fast, you feel productive, and the album goes by really quick. It's so good. So that's my next one.
More on that later. I have a lot to say about Boogie Brothers.
I really like this record. I don't have a long history. That's the only reason why it's probably right here.
I'm telling you right now, Rick, in a month from now, you're going to come back to me and you're going to be like, yeah, that one has risen in my estimation.
I'm not surprised, my friend. It's risen up almost every day. I had been faithful looking at this list thinking, can I honestly say that? Because I'm so blown away. Like a lot of those songs are so similar, those albums, but this wasn't a similar album. It really stood out on its own. The next one I have to share is Looking In. I like this record a lot. The Looking In is, again, one of those albums that they had two albums in a year. And in 1970, the year of my birth, they put out, it was a very productive year for them, honestly. And the year after that, for that matter. But anyway, what I like about this a lot, one of the big turn on about Savoy Brown is that these songs really work live. And I got to tell you, even though we're doing this ranking thing, my favorite of all of it is this Savoy Brown live kicking. I have a picture of that. And they do a lot of these songs that I've been talking about. It affects this ranking order, right? Because I'm familiar when I'm listening to these albums, I go, oh yeah, I remember that song in live. It's really good. They play it quite a bit in here. But anyway, Gypsy's cool. Money Can't Save Your Soul. There's a lot of good ones. Sunday Night, Looking In, that title track, like that. Sinking and Thinking, that nice at the very end. I mean, it's a really moving album. But this is where you see Lonesome Dave get a lot more songwriting credit. And because when he first entered the scene, they gave him like a 3-song to sing blues at the tail end. And that was cool and it was live, but here he felt like he's more of a bandmate that's contributing to this record, and it's a real good band album.
Yeah. So a couple things. So that I love that album cover.
Isn't it awesome?
Granted, it doesn't, it looks like it's like a Black Sabbath album cover or something, but still.
Yeah, it does look a little heavier than it appears.
Yeah. But still very, very cool. And Rick mentioned like live albums. So for anybody watching this episode, there's a lot of studio albums. You could go down the freaking rabbit hole with the live albums. And there's a bunch of live albums that have performances from this time period we're talking about right now. So if you like really want to hear like the 70 to 73 band lineups, there's live albums that cover that stuff. So I'm just warning everybody. You start going down the Savoy Brown rabbit hole, man, that hole's going to be going down to hollow earth because that's how much stuff is out there. Really, really cool. So anyway, I haven't fully gone down that route, but it's very easy to do so. So anyway,
sounds like something I'm going to do next.
Well, yeah, well, of course, because I mean, you and I both love live albums, so it's like I'm
that's right.
just sitting there like I don't have enough Savoy Brown live albums, right?
I only got the one, so I really got some work cut out for me.
Like because you can get they have the live albums from all the different lineups, so that's the cool.
That'd be even better, especially to get Paul too. I like to get him on it.
Yeah. All right, so number 6 for me, I'm going to go to 1981. So I'm going to go with Rock and Roll Warriors. Their 15th studio album. So as you can see by just looking at it, things are looking a little different here. This is 1981. Look at them on the back. So what do you think they're going for? They're going for more of a hard rock sound, right? Let's picture I can show here.
Kind of like the Gary Moore thing.
Maybe. So this to me, what this album sounds like, think like the Derringer Band and think maybe early Ted Nugent. That's kind of what's going on here. It's not so much bluesy and blues rock, but more of just kind of like general hard rock. You got a guy named Barry Paul who's joins Kim on co-lead guitar. So now you got two guitar players, because a lot of bands were doing this thing right around this time. Ralph Morman on lead vocals, Keith Boyce on drums, John Humphrey on bass, and a guy named John Sinclair on keyboards who would join Uriah Heep like a year or so later, right, for the Abominog album.
Hmm.
So Cold Hearted Woman is the first track on it, might be my favorite. Just killer hard rock with just big riffs and screaming guitars. It's almost like you listen to, you're like, wow, that's Savoy Brown, because a little bit different. Really good. Georgie is kind of like typical Savoy Brown kind of boogie. That's okay. Not one of my favorites here. But then you got Bad Breaks, which has some just great slide guitar. Don't Tell Me I Told You is really good. This Could Be the Night is really catchy. Sounds like early 80s hard rock. Shot Down by Love's got some great guitar solos. Bad Girls kind of sounds like almost punky in spots. Very strange. And then you got Love If You Want It is another really just crunchy blues rocker. A lot of slide guitar on Nobody's Perfect too is another good one. I think it's a very solid album that maybe not quite as heavy as they wanted to look, but there is enough heavy rock stuff on here. I think it's a good transition into the 80s album to try and do something a little bit different. But what's really cool is hearing, once again, for the first time since the Boogie Brothers, to hear that kind of back and forth trade off with two lead guitar players, which is cool. So yeah, so this, for folks who want to hear more of a rock-based sound from this band, this is the one to go check out. Very, very good. Rock and Roll Warriors from 81. That's my number 6. And my number 5 is Raw Sienna, which is on that twofer with Looking In over here. This is their 5th album from 1970. Again, a whole shitload of albums from 1969 to 70. Just pumping them out. This got a track called A Hard Way to Go, which is kind of like a jazzier number. Very cool. Kind of sounds like, Rick, you ever listen to the very, very early Steve Miller Band?
Yeah,
That's kind of what it sounds like. Very, very cool. Got good guitars from Kim, and I love Chris Yolden's vocal.
I was gonna say Chris' voice.
He's really good. He's very soulful, very soulful.
Neo and Spoon and all that. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and this is the last album he would ever appear on. So but then you got horns on That Same Feeling, which has another great guitar solo. More horns on Master Hair, which is another instrumental. That's really, really good. I like that a lot. Again, I love their instrumentals. Chris again on the bluesy Shuffle a Needle and a Spoon. I think he's great on that. A Little More Wine. It's got some slide guitar from Dave, which is awesome, right? Kind of precursor of all the great Foghat stuff. And then Is That So is an 8-minute long just excursion for Kim to lay down some splendid lead guitar. Really good album. I even like When I Was a Young Boy, which is kind of like acoustic guitar and strings, right? Very different, very cool. So great album. Raw Sienna, I could totally see people ranking that even higher. So good stuff.
Right on. More on that later.
Well,
going on to a very similar thing you did, my next one is an 80 album. And this is when they were basically the lineup that I saw them perform when I was 20 in London, Ontario. And they were working on, they had 2 albums in a row with this lineup, and I think they just had that live record called Live and Kickin'. And the album I'm thinking in 1988, Make Me Sweat. Not one. It's kind of like an 80s, obviously, album cover. You wouldn't think that speak blues or nothing. It looks like something on a fashion magazine. The strength about the record is the songs and the band's on fire. The performance is amazing. The what suffers about the record a little bit, it has that 80s sound, right? I can't help hearing now. I think it's a time where some of that sound and mix is like that Eric Clapton of the 80s or Steve Winwood, so to speak. Maybe a little Bryan Adams kind of in the mix. But the performance in this band is kicking ass. Dave Walker's singing, and they got some great tunes. But what made me struggle about sharing this album with you first is I shared it in the beginning of the show before we went live, is that this is an album that kind of like what David Coverdale did, is that he's on a new label. This is Crescendo Records at the time, and got a new lineup. It's got old new 80s look, and he redid Crying in the Rain, Here I Go Again, and then on the following record he did Fool for Your Lovin'. And just like this, some songs are better, like the Crying in the Rain and Here I Go Again, maybe. But I don't like the Fool in the Rain. Fool for Your Love, and I like the original one. So it's like that with this album. They got 4 songs that are covers. 3 of them are from the song from the past. But I can't deny that this is a good sounding record, and it's a different version. And so I had to treat it like that. Because I was thinking, well, what did Pete do when he did Whitesnake if those songs got repeated? He just ranked the album as it is, so that's what I did. So, and I'll explain it as you go. There's some cool tunes. It opens up with that boogie stuff. They always got a boogie tune, right? And it's probably the weakest thing in the record, but it's high energy. It's a good way to introduce the band, but it's not something you want to do over and over, and they don't. But Limousine Boogie, that tells you right off the bat, Just for Kicks, Good Time Lover. Then they do that version of Going Down, which is Jeff Beck did a cover, and it's very, very similar, their version, pretty cool. Then here's where I was talking about some repeats. Hard Way to Go. We know that's a good famous song, but it sounds really powerful. I don't mind this version. I like them both. They're equal. Don't Tell Me It's Over. It's a good tune. I like that. The original song, Running with the Bad Crowd. Then they brought back another gem from the past, Tell Mama. But they do a good version, and it rocks. It has a little more, less boogie, like in the 70s, had a little more meat on it. Shot in the Head, which is, I believe, from the Lion's Share record, or whatever. One of those songs being repeated again. Breaking Up and On the Prowl. Good album, but I had to forewarn you, it's a repeat from song, but it is cool. You listen to it from start from finish, it's a solid record. You say, wow, that was good, you know. Then
Yeah,
I'm going to
Shot in the Head. Shot in the Head is a kickoff track from Lion's Share, which is
okay, thank you. All right, thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, so I knew it was another cover, but mind you, they did a good job of it. Then the one you just mentioned, I think this is a great album. Again, it's a good way for Chris to show off his voice. If he's gonna go out and with a bang, this is it. I like that Master here too, Hair, whatever. Same feeling. Couple songs you didn't mention, but anyway, that's it. Moving on.
really good album. Yeah, this time
Great
period
album.
was really special in the band. So, all right, my number 4 is from 1971. I referenced it before. Their 7th album. It's called Street Corner Talking. That's right there. So this is the first album with the new lineup. So we got Kim is joined by Dave Walker on vocals, Paul Raymond on keyboards and guitar, Andy Sylvester on bass, and drummer Dave Bidwell. To me, and again, I don't know like sales wise. I'm looking right now. So this made it to number 75 on the Billboard charts here in the States. So not their highest charting album, but I would say if anybody wants to hear the most accessible Savoy Brown album, this is the one I would recommend first.
I totally agree.
Right? I mean, it's like
Yeah, oh yeah, it's everything. It speaks everything, and
yeah,
it's probably one of the most, to me, the best lineup. This is a real super lineup here.
it is. I mean, you can make an argument for this lineup or the one before it, right?
Yeah,
But
those two, yeah.
they're the two most notable lineups. But there's something about this album that's just like every song is so memorable. They don't go overboard with the long jams and extended guitar solos. It's just very compact here. I mean, you got Tell Mama on here, which you just mentioned. I mean, Tell Mama is it's just a standard upbeat bluesy boogie song. There's nothing really overly special about it, but it's so much fun.
Yes,
It's
it's
basic
infectious.
Tell Mama. It's just fun, right? It's just a fun
Yeah,
track. Um, Let It Rock and Roll on the Radio is another really good up-tempo song. I Can't Get Next to You, I can't get next to you.
Oh yeah.
It's just a great blues rocker. Oh, I mean, great vocal. It's so
Mhm.
good.
I
Tom,
do that in my band, the blues side.
oh, really? Yeah, that's not
Yeah, and
surprising.
the Temptation take on. They made it a good take on that song, big
Yeah,
time.
it's so good. Time Does Tell is really good. Street Corner Talking is kind of funky, right? Really good. What else? I mean, Dave Walker sings great on the whole thing. This has All I Can Do, which is really the one kind of like lengthier jammy track on here. Got some great organ and piano from Paul Raymond, who's a really great musician, right? Never really got enough
Big
credit.
time.
Wang Dang Doodle is like that's just it's silly, but it's so catchy, really
Yeah.
good. And it's funny because like most of these guys that are on this album came over from Chicken Shack, right?
Yes.
So folks, I mean, if you like this stuff, you should be listening to Chicken Shack too, because they were also a really talented band.
Very
And
similar.
yeah. So I think to me, if you've never listened to Savoy Brown before and you want one album to kind of give you a snapshot of what they were all about for the most part, that'll instantly draw you in, Street Corner Talking will probably do it. It's not my favorite, but I think it's the one that I can easily recommend to anybody for a first time listener. It's a fun record. I like it a lot. And my
Right
number
on. Like,
three, all right, I've been dying to talk about this one. So is Boogie Brothers. All right, so that's right there, right? So basically, this is speaking of Chicken Shack, this is basically a head-on collision between Savoy Brown, Kim Simmons, and the Chicken Shack band. So you've got Kim on guitars, you've got Stan Webb on guitars and vocals, of course, the leader of Chicken Shack. You got Miller Anderson on vocals and guitar. It's basically just it's Savoy Brown and Chicken Shack coming together, but they call it a Savoy Brown record. They probably could have called it Stan and Kim, and that would have been fine too. But
yeah.
man, so I re-listened to this again this morning, and I was thinking, we just lost Dickie Betts right the other day, and I was thinking that listening to this album, if you are an Allman Brothers band fan, especially like the first three albums,
That's right.
you need to hear this record because that's what this almost doesn't even sound like a British blues album. This sounds like an American late 60s, early 70s blues rock album with dueling twin guitars. There's actually three guitars on this album because Miller plays
Really?
guitar too. Highway Blues rips. You got Crazy Slide Guitar on Me and the Preacher. You got My Love's Lying Down, which just smoldering guitars. You Don't Love Me is rocking. Always the Same is a little more laid back, kind of little bits of blues and jazz. You got a great vocal from Miller on that. Everybody Loves a Drinking Man. It has guitars all over the place.
All over it.
Rock and Roll Star has some of the nastiest wah wah guitar licks you're going to hear. Awesome stuff. Boogie Brothers is big and heavy blues rock, loaded with guitar solos from these three guys. And then you got 3G Blues, which closes out the album. And that's an instrumental, a little more laid back, with really tasty stuff. This is a tremendous album. I don't know why more people don't talk about this record. This was 1974. I don't know why
Yep.
more people don't talk about this as one of the great guitar albums of the 70s because it is really, really good.
It is.
Fortunately, it was a one-off. But if you want to hear two, like kind of the more underground legends of blues rock guitar playing, specifically British players, Stan Webb and Kim Simmons, you need to hear Boogie Brothers. Go out and get it immediately. I'm so happy Rick got it. And I'm telling you, Rick, in about a month or so from now, you're going to come back. You're going to send me a message. You're going to be like, hey, you know what? That Boogie Brothers album, that might be one of my favorites now because it's that
Oh,
good.
I know. I believe that. I just felt like, how can I? I've been listening to those albums so long, and this is like 2024 listening, and I really like it. And it ranked really high because I'm blown away. I
It could have
love the
been my number
sonically
one.
about it.
It could have been my number one. I think because to me, it's kind of like it's almost like an oddity in the catalog because it's not really a Savoy Brown album. It's
That's the
basically
thing. If you go on some site, it doesn't even list it under discography. They list it under Kim Simmons. They don't, even though it's a Savoy Brown on the name, but they don't list it. Go check it out. You see that they skip it. And I'm like, I know, because when you go to the site, it show all the album.
it's just
Anyway,
as much a Chicken Shack album as it is a Savoy Brown album. I mean, that's
yeah,
so, but it's great. It's great. So, folks watching, please go out and listen to this because I think you really dig it.
I
Your top two.
I'm so glad that you told me, asked me to do that homework because I went and got those albums because of that, and it came in time, so I'm glad. This what I have to say, if we did only the 70s and up to this point, this would have been my number one album. But it's my, number nine, I mean, number two, because of there's one more. I just think it's just a stronger start to finish. But it, Street Corners Talking is the ultimate album for anybody to start. I do agree with everything you said. I don't have to go further other than, the live version of some of these versions on Live and Kicking is amazing to hear. But yeah, Can't Get Next to You, Let It Rock, All I Can Do, all those tunes. There's one catchy song after another. And what I like about it is that what happens with some blues bands, they sound like one dimension. They do the same shuffle or whatever. They went from one tempo to another tempo to a different tempo. Like you couldn't get bored with this stuff. They didn't outweigh it, outweigh the welcome, so to speak. And it's a perfect album for me. So what could be number one? Well, it's Dave Walker in this band again. That voice and a lot of that talent is in here. But it's the 1989 King of Boogie. It's an album that they put out, and it has originals on it. Not like the album prior to that, Make Me Sweat, where they used some song from their past. This is all brand new songs, and some songs even got in some movie soundtrack that I saw. Heartbreak Makes You Strong. But there's the title track is probably the weakest song. It's because it's a boogie, right? Called King of Boogie, and they had that gang chant, we're the king of boogie, the king of boogie. So they had like the road crew joining them on this. I can definitely know that the audience will definitely participate because it's infectious that way. But that's the weakest track, and they open up with a 3-minute song like that. Other than that, everything else go deep, and it kind of reminds me of, unlike it still has that 80 production, but not so much like the Bryan Adams, sound. It's more like our maybe Victim of the Future, Perfect Strangers kind of 80s sound, where it's a little warmer, but you still have the tricks of the 80s, but it's just not overly glossy, right? It still has that, the sign of that they're a rock band more, and that's something like you described about the. What was it? Rock and Roll Warriors? Was it the name of the other one? But it's kind of like that, where it's more of a rock base, but they got a lot of blues feel in there. Just like if you remember Tear It Up. Is it Tear It Up or Take What You Need from Robin Trowler band at that time? It had that 80s sound, but it had that blues. So it sounds like that. But anyway, Deep in My Heart, great tune. A Man Alone, great tune. Like these songs, it's just long enough. Soon you're saying, okay, you ran its course, it's over. No Win Love, Mean Business. And like I said, a lot of these songs are all written by Simmons. The only one is written by the band is King of Boogie. Must have just jamming out. But Mean Business, Bad State of Mind, the best track probably, Heartbreak Makes You Strong. Since You've Been Gone, not that cover, but it's a bluesy number, kind of like all I want to do is cry, kind of type of tempo, kind of feel. Caught Me in the Saddle, All Burnt Out, and it ends on with Until the Sky Fades Away. These songs, they're strong, they're quick. And I just couldn't help how fast the album goes by with it, because it's that enjoyable. Just like Street Corners Talking, it doesn't outstay its welcome. By the time you're starting to, all right, it's over. And I'm like, kind of like one of those songs that some of those songs are like, they end a little too soon. Could you kind of wouldn't mind them carried on a little further? Could you really enjoy the record?
Yeah, most of these albums are fairly short. They're not long.
No.
Yeah. I love that cover, by the way. That's so big.
Yeah, that is cool.
So Kim Simmons was pretty prone to playing flying V guitars, just so everybody knows. So it's like he's got one right on the cover there. It's pretty cool.
So this is the lineup. I basically saw the band, and I gotta tell you, if we counted live records, this would be my favorite because it's the tour of that King of Boogie album, and they do the greatest hits. And guess what? Let me, I should read you the song because it's all the ones that you've been mentioning in your ranking. Well, opened with Heartbreak Makes You Strong, which is important for them. Can't Get Next to You. 15 Miles Ago, Raise Some Thunder, Since You've Been Gone, the medley of 20 minutes that everything from I'm Tired, Poor Girl, Street Quarters Talking, it's like a big medley of songs like that. Bad Intention, Poor Girl, Wang Dang Doodle, All I Can Do Is Cry, and Hey Mama. But there's a lot of tunes in here. And what's else? Louisiana Blues, all in that medley. They stretch it to like 20 minutes. But his guitar playing and his tone is so amazing. He was playing the Les Paul, right? And it sounds some like some of that stuff that I like from the song Means the Same, Since I've Been Loving You. It's like that light and shade tone that he had. It's heavy but light at the same time. You can go really quiet. That's what it's like. The dynamic in this album is amazing, and the band is great, and Dave Walker is in fine form.
Cool.
In fact, I think he sounds better live in some of these songs than I hear in the studio.
Yeah, well, there's some guys who are just on the stages where they all their talents really come out. So yeah, I never got I was telling Rick the story a couple days ago, but I never got a chance to see Savoy Brown live. However, in a way, I did. So years ago, probably like the mid '90s, I was working in a town called Chester, New York, and in the town, very tiny town, they had this little place called Boodle's Opera House, which was just a small little restaurant, cafe, music venue, right? They would have like local bands and whatnot, but occasionally you get some name bands there. But man, the place was no bigger than my living room. So like literally probably maybe 40, 50 people could fit in there, if that. And so one night after, it was like a Friday night after work, I don't know, I went out with some friends from work to one of the local bar restaurant in town, and then, which was across the street from this place. And I remember walking out of this place and hearing a band playing across the street. So I was like, all right. So I walk across the street and I go look in the window, and who's there on stage? Kim Simmons and his band, Savoy Brown. I see the on the front door, Savoy Brown tonight. And I'm just like, how the hell did I not know he was playing there? You know, right, How I know. It's crazy, right? Yeah, exactly. So yeah. So that was the closest I ever got to seeing Kim Simmons. Yeah, until I actually did a Zoom call with him and had him on the channel a bunch of years ago before he passed. But he was living up in, I think, like Rochester or Syracuse, somewhere upstate from me, up near Canada. So kind of between the two of us. That's where he's been living for like 30 years or whatever. So go figure. So
Well, he coming to Windsor's Blues Fest quite often. I think him and Buddy Guy are probably the most frequent guests that we have that come a lot. And yeah, so I got to hang out with him a couple of times. Got to get a couple guitar picks with his name stapled on it. So it's in my scrapbook, right on top of the ticket. Back when we had tickets.
cool.
So anyway, that's cool.
Right. Number two for me, I'm going to go with 1969's Blue Matter. So that's their third album. Very much, in that British blues style. And what's kind of cool and interesting about this album is it's part studio, part live. Starts off with Train to Nowhere, which is just a really good, upbeat, bluesy romp, really fun song. Tolling Bells is like 7 minutes long. It's dark, slow blues. Good piano from Bob Hall, great lead guitar from Kim, Chris Yolden again, great vocals on that. Awesome song. She's Got a Ring in Her Nose and a Ring in Her Band is just good, heavy, early British blues rock. It's like Zeppelin, right? It's just really good stuff. Big riffs, stinging guitar solos. Really like that a lot. It's one of my favorites from the band, actually. You got what else is on here? Vicksburg Blues. It's all kind of piano and vocals. Not one of my favorites on the album, but everything else is great on here. Don't Turn Me From Your Door, heavy blues rock shuffle, big riffs from Kim. Maybe Wrong is the big, that's just a great song. It's one of the live tracks on here. It's basically just a long 8-minute instrumental guitar solo. It's just amazing. Louisiana Blues is on here too. More great stuff from Kim. The live stuff is just killer on here, which goes back to your point that their live stuff is really what you want to hear. It Hurts Me Too is also on here, and that's just got some great solos on there. So great stuff. This is my number two. Could have been my number one, but my number one is the one with the cool heavy metal looking cover, looking in with the
Nice.
skull and all that kind of stuff. So here you got Dave Peverett, help now joining on lead vocals and rhythm guitar and slide guitar. I think this album rocks. There's some great songs on here. Poor Girl is great. Money Can't Save Your Soul is kind of psychedelic. You mentioned that before. There is like a little psychedelic thing going on here. Sunday Night is good, bluesy instrumental, really good solos from Kim.
Hmm.
Take It Easy, Sitting and Thinking, another great instrumental. What's interesting on Sitting and Thinking is like there's like some cool twin guitars thing going on here. Kind of reminds me of Wishbone Ash in spots, just a little bit, which is really
Yeah, I
cool.
can see that.
Yeah, Leaving Again is good, and Roaming Off is fun. I don't know. I think this is a killer album, and it's my favorite for now anyway.
Oh,
Looking
cool.
at
That's awesome.
yeah. So, the moral of the story, folks, is that there are a lot of really strong albums here. And obviously, with only doing 10 each, we had some overlap, but not some overlap. And there's still a ton of albums we didn't even
Yeah,
talk about. So,
exactly. Like I had Blue Matter and it got knocked out by getting to the point because of a couple of tracks that I really like. But only because I thought they got lazy by throwing a three live track, but there were three great live tracks. It's hard because a lot of these songs, just like albums or just like that Guess Who ranking, they're very similar in potency, the way they have a formula, so to speak. Making sure we
yeah,
got the blues, make sure we got this, make sure we got that on the record.
yeah.
But right on.
Yeah, like if you like we neither one of us had this in our list, but like Lion's Share and Jack the Toad, which came out like one after another. These are all very, very similar
Very
to
good.
each other.
Yeah.
It's more of like kind of like that boogie bluesy type stuff. They're good. They're to me, they're not quite top 10
And a little
material.
more Americana on that one.
Yeah, but good stuff. And like I said, there's tons of stuff from throughout the years. A lot of live albums, a lot of compilations. So there's just Wire Fire is another really good one from 75, which came
Yeah.
out after Boogie Brothers, but that's good. Skin and Bone is really good too. So much to choose from. So for everybody watching, if you are a Savoy Brown fan, list your favorite 10, or if you want to go further, feel free
Please do.
down in the comments below. But if you've never listened to this band, I think you have lots of great places to go check out the band. And please do seek out the BGO Records 2-on-1 sets. Most of them are 2 disc sets. If they're still available, that's the best way to go get into this catalog because you can knock off a whole bunch of albums just by buying a handful of these, and they're usually very, very affordable. So, and most of them are all remastered. They are remastered, and occasionally they might, and they always have really good booklets. Like just for instance,
Yes.
I'll open one up just so you can kind of see what they generally do. BGO has some of the great reissues. So here, this is the one for Lion's Share and Jack the Toad. So you got full like essay on the albums and who plays on them, and full photos, information on the recordings, all that kind of stuff. So if you're a collector who has that thing called the curse, that's the way to go.
Yeah, and as you go through them all, you're basically getting a novel because each book tells a story where these pages go. So by having this whole thing, you're almost reading a book about the whole band anthology, all the personalities that come and
Yeah,
go.
absolutely. So great place to start for this band, right with the BGO releases. So anyway, that's what we got. So thanks for watching this episode of Ranking the Albums. Tune in. Rick's going to be back again next weekend because he's joining Jamie Laszlo and the review crew once again to talk about a couple new releases. So stay tuned for that. What else we got coming up here on the channel? Well, it's Sunday. Um, uh, in the Proxy Tuesday night. Jeez, I'm drawing a blank here. And then Wednesday, of course, is new album review day. Martin Popoff's back Friday. Ken Golden's back on Friday. And then next Saturday, like I said, will be the review crew. And then Sunday, we'll be ranking the albums. Anthony Ferraro and I will be ranking the albums of Steve Hillage, the great guitar player,
Cool.
gong and lengthy solo career. We're going to be ranking his solo album. So that's a week from today. So stay tuned for that. And then May is chock full of other ranking shows. We got Sodom, we got more metal and all sorts of stuff. So we'll tell everybody the schedule on that as it happens. But till then, visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube all together all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already and click on that notification bell to get alert of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit the like button before you leave. For Rick Labonte, I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for watching this episode on Savoy Brown. Enjoy the music if you go and investigate it. And we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Take care.